Chest up, shoulders back. This is Revival Fitness, your home for gains and brains. And you probably have seen that the two-show pro, the sensation Sam Sulek, he has done it in, I think his competitive career has been, it's under a month still, and he has already won his pro card. And this is something I want to discuss within the context of the bros versus the science, because we've talked about this many times on this channel, and it's an ongoing topic of conversation. You have the science-based crew, and they will not acknowledge anything without a study to back it up, and they think posting a PMID is ironclad proof of anything, and they hate anecdotes, except when it benefits them. Then you have the bros, who tend to sort of figure things out on their own, and they use more old-school principles, stuff that they kind of just get told to do, and the ongoing debate is like, oh, well, which is really better? And of course, the science has to be better. Then you take a look at the track record, and it doesn't seem to pan out that way. And we will use Mike Israetel here, not only because he is one of the, essentially, godfathers of the modern so-called science-based movement, but he is also in the same situation as Sam, or the situation Sam was in, trying to get a pro card. Both are bodybuilders. I give them both credit for that. There are far too many fake so-called bodybuilders on social media that use the title, but they never actually will do it, you know, in spite of their entire life revolving around muscles and hypertrophy and the gym and the diet. But they still won't compete because they're But Mike is interesting because he has done, I want to say, at least a half dozen shows over the years, it may be more, and as far as I know, he put out that video after his last show. I think he got like 4th or 5th or 6th place. That seems to be where he places pretty regularly. Like, he's not even particularly on the cusp of getting his pro card. And mind you, too, as far as I know, Mike competes in the Masters division, which also award pro cards, but it's easier to get them in the Masters than the non-Masters, because Masters is 35 and up, at least the last time that I checked. So, Mike has a bit of a skewed playing field to begin with, and he still cannot get his pro card, even with all of his supposed knowledge and all these attempts. Meanwhile, Sam walked in, won his first show, and he looked damn good for his first show. I mean, there's so many things that can go wrong, and he even improved on that look within the span of about 2 weeks at the Arnold Classic, and I don't believe he has a formal coach either. But here's the kicker, too. Mike does not have a coach either. Everything I've seen Mike talk about regarding this, he says that he does not have a coach because he will not listen to anybody. At least he's being honest about that. But that's Mike's biggest problem, first and foremost. He cannot admit that he's wrong. And I don't know a ton about Sam in this regard, but simply based on Sam's demeanor and the content of his that I've seen, Sam seems like the type of dude that can admit that he's wrong, and he will make the adjustments as needed. Mike will not do that. I mean, seriously, in his first show, Sam was more ripped than Mike has ever been, and it was not particularly close. I mean, noticeable amounts of body fat lower. Sam had striations and lines in his lower back. I mean, truly, some of this stuff was looking like Olympia level, and he's not there yet totally, but his low back conditioning is remarkable in of itself, and you can see his abs, he's got all the lines, he's got definition everywhere, like, he looks damn good. Then you compare that to the pictures of Mike that I've seen. Mike, I truly don't think he's ever been below 10% body fat on stage. I mean, you could probably argue that Mike has never really been below 12%. Even think about the posing, too. I mean, I had a similar problem as Sam at his first show, at my recent show. If you guys don't know, flexing your quads on stage is not easy. It may seem easy, as I thought it would be too. Sam probably had the same assumption. But there is something about it that is just very difficult to do in the moment. Probably because you're very focused on flexing your upper body more so, but you can effectively look much less lean than you are if you are not properly flexing your quads. And Sam had that issue at his first show, and within 2 weeks he totally fixed it, and just his posing in general, Sam's posing was pretty darn crisp. I don't know if he did anything with a posing coach or anything in that realm, but his presentation was very polished, the entire thing. I mean, even in general, like, his face control was good. I remember my first show, I looked like a deer in headlights on stage. I looked totally lost. That's very common. I've seen a lot of Mike's photos. He's got the same look, you know, like eyes kind of bulging out, just looking around, kind of confused. that plays a part as well. Mike has had many, many years to polish his posing. He never has. And we're not going to sit here and analyze all of their poses side by side. I'm sure other channels have done that. I don't really care to. You can look up their contest pictures if you really want to. But there's no debating it. Sam is a better bodybuilder than Mike, objectively. And he is still a total rookie in this field. And he does not have a formal degree, at least that I know of. I believe he's getting a degree in STEM. I think someone said it was chemistry or engineering. And as far as I can tell, Sam is basically just a gym bro that got very popular online, and now he is where he is. Like, he has absolutely capitalized on these opportunities. Now compare that to Mike, who is almost double Sam's age. He's got a PhD in sports science or exercise science or whatever exactly it is. He's got all the credentials. He has all of this supposed knowledge, way more than Sam does, and he has still failed to get a pro card in the easier division of his activity. Israetel's taken a lot of heat lately. That Lyle mcdonald takedown that went really viral, that had a lot to do with it, I think. But there's been people that have gone at Mike for years before, but that's how it goes with anybody very popular. It's not really until a big video pops off that people start to turn on them. I mean, I can tell you that as the guy that really spearheaded the movement against Doucette a few years ago with the maingaining bullshit. Nobody called him out about it. He was just coasting through saying whatever he wanted. Then whenever I formally presented what I did, people started to kind of be like, yeah, this guy's full of shit. And I'm sure he promotes the same thing now. It's many years later. His audience has had a total turnover. He can still say all the nonsense that he says. But in general, that's how it goes with creators that reach the level that Mike is at, that Greg is at, even that Sam is at, because I think Sam on YouTube is bigger than both Greg and Dr. Mike. So don't be surprised if people turn on Sam at some point. Exactly why, I don't know, but that's how it goes. That said, there are valid reasons to criticize people, and Greg's had plenty of that, Mike's had plenty of that. Sam is interesting, though, because he just sort of talks, right? Like, he's not somebody that flaunts credentials. He does not come on here and start drama with people like Greg does. You know, you see Dr. Mike on here, exercise scientist critiques, and he goes through all these Olympians and these champions and these pro athletes and all these people, and all of them are better at what they do than Mike is at what he does. But if you ask me, given everything that I've seen up to this point, I think Sam is smarter than Mike. I know people are going to get upset at that, like I said, but realistically, all the evidence that we have, can you really reach another conclusion? Like, I know Mike has the supposed studies behind him, even though he never actually cites any of them, and he can use the fancy words, and he's got the training model, you know, the minimum effective volume up to maximum recoverable volume, and, you know, you go through the mesocycles and all this fancy shit. Sam is just a guy that comes in and trains, so on the surface you'd be like, what do you mean, bro? Of course Mike is smarter. He's got the PhD and Sam doesn't. Let's put the rubber to the road here, because that's what this really comes down to. Sam did excellent in his first show. He won the overall, which is not easy to do in your first show, even if you're going to take a bunch of gear like he did, right? People say, oh, Sam takes a bunch of gear. Yeah, well, so does Mike. Okay, we don't know the exact details, but they both take a good amount. This is one of the many reasons why the steroid conversation is a total crapshoot. Everyone's taking a ton of shit. And people, when they talk about it, they will heavily downplay what they take, or outright lie about it, let alone say they take nothing when they're taking a lot. It's a bunch of nonsense. But both of them are, let's say, even on the drug aspect. In terms of the genetic aspect, you can say that Sam has better genetics. You know, I see some people say that Sam is a genetic freak. I do not believe that he is. I would definitely say that he has good bodybuilding genetics. I could even see very good or great, but I don't believe Sam is like top 5 or 10%. Now that said, he makes the absolute most of what he has. Besides glutes, he has no ass. Sam's gonna have to grow an ass if he wants to be more competitive in the future. But then you compare that to Mike. You know, I hear people talk about Mike like, oh, he's got such terrible genetics. Dude, I'm not convinced that Mike's genetics are that bad. I don't think they're good. But this idea that he's like some just genetic, unfortunate case, I don't really think so, man. Again, we're never going to really know what Mike's full potential is in terms of bodybuilding, because he can never control his diet. So even if you want to acknowledge the genetic disparity and say Mike is slightly below average and that Sam is notably above average, I can even grant you that. All that said, Mike has had a massive head start compared to Sam. Sam is, I believe, 23 years old. He's been training, I want to say, since high school. Now, compare that to Mike. He's been training since, I want to say, almost as long or maybe longer than Sam has been alive. And by the way, guys, I know that there's going to be some stuff in here that I say that is not totally accurate. Okay, you can fact check me in the comments. People are going to leave giant novels. You did not do your proper research, bro. I don't got the time, buddy. And something that's interesting as well, in terms of the diet, they eat kind of similarly. Now, I have not kept up with Sam's diet during his prep. I don't know exactly what he's been eating. I know that during his bulks, Sam basically eats whatever he wants. He's eating Five Guys burgers and fries and really sugary cereals and donuts and pounding chocolate milk. I mean, that guy's diet is a total disaster, at least on paper. Now, Sam is younger. I mean, the effects of that are going to, I think, be more pronounced long term. And people have commented that Sam looks a lot older than he is. And they'll say, oh, it's the steroids. I think Sam's diet contributes to his aging as much, if not more, than the steroids. And the same applies for Dr. Mike. I mean, Dr. Mike, I think, is just over 40. I remember a year or two ago, I saw it was like his 40th birthday, and I was like, oh my god. Like, I would have guessed he was minimum 50 years old. There are certain pictures and videos of Mike you see, he looks like he's pushing 60. And that's very common in bodybuilding in general. That's kind of the nature of the game. That said, their diets certainly do not help. You can find plenty of examples of the general public who take no steroids at all, and they look way older than they actually are. Go on a dating app. You'll see it real fast. Now, does Mike have enough muscle mass to get a pro card? I believe he does. His biggest problem is his conditioning, and that fundamentally is an issue of diet. And I don't believe that Sam is some dietary wizard. You know, I've heard him talk about nutrition here and there. I'd say it's very standard. Some of it is reductionist, Kaiko parrot stuff. Granted, Mike is really the same. I mean, Mike is talking about, oh, I used to teach basic nutrition classes at college. Yeah, very basic to say the least. So I don't know if Sam was eating as much sugar as he normally does during his prep. I would assume no. And I think that's one of Mike's biggest downfalls, is all the sugar he consumes. But that's for another day. In any case, the common denominator with both of them is that they do not eat typically clean from what I have seen. These aren't dudes that are eating chicken rice and broccoli, or tilapia and sweet potato and asparagus at every single meal. Now let's compare the training, because this is where there is major variance in terms of what they do just in the gym itself. Number one, and this is not debatable if you are serious, Sam trains hard. Mike does not. End of story. Anybody who is going to try to debate that is probably Mike on a sock account or one of his employees on a sock account. And when it comes to the training, you guys have probably seen Mike has his entire layout of going up in volume in the mesocycles and then the deloads. And he's got, his very controlled form. He really milks the negative out. He gets the super deep stretch on everything. He's got all those principles that he has become very known for. Then you compare that to Sam. And Sam just goes in, and I don't want to say he just throws weight around, which I've seen him do on some occasions, but he lifts much more old school, right? He just picks a lift that he likes, and his negative is not really slow, and he just kind of pumps it up and down, and he gets to an intensity point. Sometimes he outright fails, sometimes he doesn't, but he pushes himself very hard. In terms of the range of motion, and that's another thing Mike is very known for, team full ROM on everything possible, even when it becomes sort of laughable. Sam is a mixed bag with that. Like, I've seen him squat very deep. I've seen other stuff where he short strokes the range of motion to a noticeable degree. Other stuff like maybe incline bench press, he'll go down about 80% of the way. So he has variance with that. And you think about all these variables, because Mike is always talking about how the science shows, and his entire company's motto and brand is built on the science, right? They have all of the scientific knowledge, and I'm not saying his information is totally useless, but you compare Mike to not only Sam, but so many general bodybuilders who have their pro cards, and who have gone much farther than Mike does. How many of them train like Mike? If I'm not mistaken, Mike still does a push-pull legs himself, or something similar. Like, I think he trains 6, maybe even 7 days a week, like he goes to the gym every day, in some context. I don't know if Sam does that. As far as I know, though, Sam does more of a classic bro split style, and Mike does the more frequency. No matter how you slice it up, their training has noticeable differences to it. And this is one of the funniest things, and it's not just in terms of these two, I've thought about this in general. You see so much of this optimal content, and let the record show, by the way, that I was promoting 4 day upper lower splits on here years ago, before the so-called science-based guys ever talked about them. Yeah, I didn't need a bunch of studies to so-called prove it. I had common sense and experience. You see all these hypertrophy cells on Instagram now, the science-based optimal kids running around 4-day upper-lower splits, bro, and even 3-day full body. I was telling y'all to do those years ago, and I've done them, and you've seen the progress that I have made. No science needed. Now that said, I still believe there is an advantage to higher frequency compared to lower. So in terms of the general training layout, I would probably favor Mike. I think he goes to the gym too much overall, and his volume is on the higher side from what I've seen for me. Some of the stuff I've seen of him, more so in the past especially, it's laughable, the volume recommendations. But when you train it permanently 8 reps in reserve like Mike does, you can handle a lot more volume. You train very intensely like I do or like Sam does, your volume threshold is going to be much lower by default. And on that note, if you do want to check out my programs for novices and intermediates, check out the links down below. Not just exercises on a sheet, I break down everything you need to make serious gains in the long haul, and the proof is in the pudding. You can see all kinds of testimonials on my site of guys that got much greater gains and much shorter time frames than they ever did before, and than they ever thought was possible. So when it comes to training, especially at the NPC IFBB level, it's always, oh well, they're genetic freaks, bro, they're on steroids, bro, they could do jumping jacks and do push-ups and build a bunch of muscle. To an extent, that is definitely true. Especially the more elite genetics that somebody has, the more they can essentially play around in the gym and keep making progress. That said, Mike is supposed to have all of this knowledge. He is supposed to be the complete expert. He has all the information you could ever possibly need. He should have a way to counteract his lack of great genetics. Like, if what Mike said was so true, you would assume that Mike would be able to counteract that with all of his knowledge. Once again, rubber meets the road, does not seem to pan out. And don't get it twisted, Mike is obviously very muscular. I think he's like, 5'5" or 5'6". He walks around to like 250 pounds. He's clearly extremely built, but is his level of muscle mass remarkably better than his peers? I don't believe it is. But the biggest difference overall between Mike and Sam is that Sam will learn from his mistakes, and Mike will not. Sam got ripped. Mike never has. And this is, again with Mike, man, I don't know what it is with him. Maybe it's an ego problem more than anything else, but he will not really make major changes. I mean, dude, Mike is at the point now, he's competed so many times, we've got enough evidence of this. He needs to make a major dietary overhaul if he wants to have a serious chance of getting his pro card. This is something I remember Lyle mcdonald brought up, and I think he's dead on with it. Mike would rather not accept advice from other people and continue to lose than accept that he could be wrong and make those changes and actually win. Do you think Mike is ever going to really come in conditioned? I have no reason to believe that he is. And maybe this is something that happened to Mike as he got very famous. I mean, he is a legit personality cult. He has been for a number of years now. But he's extremely popular. He's on all these podcasts all the time. I mean, he's about as big of a megastar as you can get for a general internet fitness personality. Maybe Sam is going to overtake him, but Sam doesn't have the credentials, right? That's one of Mike's biggest calling cards, right? The PhD, the exercise scientist. So even channels that don't talk about lifting really will have him on because of those credentials. I mean, I've seen thumbnails over the years of Mike on all these podcasts, you know, fitness ones, general health ones, even talking to like doctors and just general self-improvement. And it's always like, exercise scientist reveals the best way to shred fat, how to get ripped, how to lose fat and keep it off. He can never do it himself. I'm not going to say this 100% because Mike obviously has skin in the game. He's obviously very muscular, but in a way, he is kind of a keyboard jockey when it comes to what he says, because he cannot apply the principles that he knows and preaches to everybody for himself in the context of bodybuilding. And bodybuilding is not healthy. You don't have to do it, but that's the pursuit that Mike has chosen. He told Omar Isuf verbatim, you know, I did this to prove that my methods work, or some variation of that, and even in other areas too. I mean, Mike has a separate channel, he talks about general life stuff, and I've really not watched any content from that one. I did make a full reaction to this video, in which Mike talks about attracting women. He gives like a full 45-minute lecture about it, and he's very wrong about a lot. You can check out my response to him in the top corner. And you think about this too, I mean, he has nothing but time on his hands. I mean, dude, Mike can just sit there and film videos. He's got a video person. He's got editors. He's got a whole team to do all this for him. He essentially trains for a living at this point. He makes more money off of internet stuff than he could ever need. He doesn't have to physically work or do anything else. Like, he has all this time on his hands to fix the training, to fix the diet, to fix the posing, to do all this stuff, and it just doesn't seem to happen. So Mike at this point seems like he is addicted to the smell of his own farts. I don't get mad at him for it. You know, I'm sure he's living extremely comfortably. He can go do whatever he wants. But it seems to me like he's got a pretty big ego. And if you try to call him out on it like Lyle did, he reacts like a child. Which is a very, very, very common trend among the science-based crowd, no matter what level or what platform or what specific niche that you're talking about. And then Sam comes on here and talks in his calm voice, and he chops it up and just pursues his goals and documents it and does well. So it looks like the science has lost once again. Another dub for the bros. But this has been it for me, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Check out my programs and my nutrition guide linked down below if you want to get a full encompassing look at these things and stop wasting your precious time. If you want to do a consultation with me, be sure to email me, we'll set that up, or fill out the coaching inquiry form. We will talk about that as well, and I will catch you guys next time.